Frank asked me how I was feeling at every break. He wished we'd talked before. He did soften me up. Could we really be something? But Frank immediately destroyed all my hopes. He asked if my friend was free for the weekend. It was like a bucket of ice water was poured over me. He had a crush on my mom after all. Latex bodysuit was so tight that I couldn't breathe and the fishnet ties painfully dug into my thighs. I opened the dressing room curtain and waited in horror for my mom to say something, but she looked at me in silence, turned around and went somewhere. And it was clearly over the top, but a couple of minutes later, she came back with a fluffy Playboy girl tail and said it would perfectly complement my look. I finished my sandwich while my mom dragged me into the car. "What's going on?" She asked for my college's address. What's the point? My mom was never interested in my studies. She was at the parties all day long. As soon as we drove away from the house, my mom asked me to pretend to be her friend. I think she fell in love with the guy from my college, and now she wants to seduce him. Mom, are you crazy? We pulled up to the college and stopped at the main entrance. Mom pointed a finger at one of the guys. Here he is. My classmate, Frank? It was like an electric shock. I've been in love with him for a year. We've only talked a couple of times, but it was enough to understand that we were soulmates. And now my mother and I are bidding for the same guy. You will help me, right? My mother's voice brought me back to reality. I hesitated. This is some kind of nonsense. No one will believe that we are friends. And then my mom blurted out that if I didn't agree, she wouldn't pay for my studies anymore. I could tell by her attitude that she wasn't joking after she gave birth to me at 17. My mom never tried to get an education. I didn't want such a fate for myself. Hesitantly, I still agreed to help her seduce Frank. Hopefully she'll switch to another guy soon. My mom always does that. Mom decided that I would take her to the party where Frank would be, and then Mom would do everything herself. I was burning with shame because of the tight bodysuit. But my mom was delighted. Some drunk guys were whistling to us from the other side of the street. I pressed the doorbell hard. Hurry up and let us in. But when my classmate Anne opened the door, it turned out that everyone at the party was in ordinary clothes. Am I being played? Anne explained that the other girls were too shy to come in revealing costumes, and asked what my friend's name was. Ma? I started but then stopped. Melanie. My mother gave me a reproachful look as she came in. I almost revealed her. While my mother hovered in front of the mirror, I decided to look around the house. Suddenly, I saw Frank sweetly smiling at some girl. My stomach clenched. I didn't know he had a girlfriend. Then my mother came back, and I thought that since she had noticed Frank with this girl, she'd decide to give up her crazy idea. But that didn't happen. My mother said that some youngsters are not a rival to her, and as soon as Frank went to get them drinks, Mom grabbed a burning candle from the table and went to that girl. Mom, stop! I saw her decisively holding the candle right to the girl's hair, and her luxuriant curls burnt into flame in an instant. Fortunately, the fire was quickly extinguished, but Frank's girlfriend almost lost her hair. My mom was happy that she got rid of her rival so easily. She was about to suck up to Frank, but I heard that the guys were going to call the police. We're leaving. Just what we need, the cops. My mother gave Frank a languid look and introduced herself. God, this is so embarrassing. The next day, Mom dragged me outside to follow Frank and accidentally meet him. Mom found his Instagram page and saw that he usually spends time playing gambling machines. And she took me there. Against the backdrop of teenagers in oversized hoodies, she looked too provocative in her tight dress. Everyone was looking at us, but my mother didn't mind. She was looking for Frank. Fortunately, he wasn't there. We were just about to leave when my mom called out. Here he is, and she dragged me somewhere. Frank was playing the dance platform. How cool he was dancing. I stared at him, and of course he noticed. Then my mom chimed in. She started bragging about how we could dance on dance platforms as well as Scott Pilgrim from the horror movie. Before I could protest, my mom grabbed my arm and immediately dragged me to the dance platform. I didn't dance at all, and neither did my mom. But my mom tried so hard. She was even sweating, and I was helplessly twitching, hoping to get a little bit into the rhythm. Thought it couldn't get any worse. But suddenly, during the next movement, my mom brushed against me and I lost my balance. Frank tried to catch me, but I fell and twisted my leg. It hurt so bad. He examined my ankle and said that there was no fracture. I just needed to ice it. My mom began to convince Frank that I was alright. Offered to go to another platform, but Frank refused. You should have seen my mom's face. She was burning with jealousy. I went to college the next day even though my leg still hurt. Frank asked me how I was feeling at every break. It was so nice. He said I was cool. He wished we'd talked before. He did soften me up. Could we really be something? But Frank immediately destroyed all my hopes. He asked if my friend was free for the weekend. It was like a bucket of ice water was poured over me. He had a crush on my mom after all. Fighting back tears, I said I'd pass on the invitation and said goodbye to Frank. My mom was preparing for a date all evening, sorting through dresses and thinking about what makeup would suit her best. I just wanted to disappear. My life was falling apart. In the morning, when she and Frank left, I burst into tears. What should I do if things worked out for them? Pretend to be my mother's friend until I'm old? No, I can't do that. Frank may not have chosen me, but he needs to know the truth. I tried to call him, but the phone was offline. Then I began to write to my classmates. Maybe someone knew the address of Frank's cottage, but no one answered. I was already desperate, but one girl answered me, and I immediately called a taxi. As soon as I arrived, I immediately rushed to knock on the door. No one opened it, but I kept going, and finally, Frank looked out, surprised. At the back of the house, I saw my mother sitting carelessly with a glass of wine in her hands. It made me so angry. There was nothing left to lose, so I turned to Frank and told him the most important thing. My mother was visiting him, and I had been in love with him for a year. I was relieved to admit it. How unbearable it was to carry this burden. Mom jumped up from the couch, throwing her glass on the floor. She shouted that I was a traitor and ran into the street only in dress. Frank was taken aback at first, but quickly pulled himself together and said that we needed to find her. It could be dangerous in the forest. After all, we were quite far from the city. We immediately went in search of her. I was so excited. I just wanted to tell the truth, but it turned out I just messed it up. Why did Frank react so calmly? Suddenly, he said that he had known the truth for a long time. Someone from college recognized my mom at the party, and rumors spread fast. At first, it was just fun for him to watch us, but soon he really liked me. But for my mom, he had a special plan. Frank wanted her to meet his father, because she was definitely his type. We walked through the forest for a long time and called for my mom, but she was nowhere to be found. We were already cold ourselves when we suddenly came to an old bus stop. And there was Mom! She was sitting there in her little dress and was already fainting from the cold. It was great that she was okay. Frank immediately gave her his jacket, and we called a taxi. We went back to the cottage. We were met at the door by a polite and handsome man, Frank's father. He was surprised to see us like this and said we could use some hot tea. I even thought that he would really be a great match for my mother. But my mother, when she looked at Frank's father, was taken aback. Without taking her eyes off him, she whispered, "Is it really you?" Then she slowly shifted her gaze and said, "Lily, this is your father. Say hello." I could feel my legs faltering. I think I just found out that I had been in love with my own brother for a year.